Hello and welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to give you a super simplified, very easy to digest and understand version of a full phase 2 liver detoxification guide. I think sometimes these more advanced concepts feel kind of scary and overwhelming because the person presenting it doesn't really understand it that well and almost kind of wants to show off how intelligent they are by making things really complicated. But today, I want to keep things super simple. I'm going to give you a couple of key indicators as symptoms that kind of show us which phase 2 detoxification processes you might be struggling with. And then I'm going to give you practical actionable steps that you can do. So these would be basically like different supplements that you can take, maybe like a way that you can change your diet or a certain modality that you could try to use to help with the blockage in that phase 2 detoxification process. So this isn't going to be like one of those super sciencey, like I'm going to get my whiteboard up and like walk you through and show all the different biochemical things. These are the symptoms that you probably are experiencing if you have a blockage in this pathway, and this is the supplement that you take to help your body with it. So it's going to be really easy to digest, super easy to understand, and very practical in your ability to implement something from this video. So I'm going to keep it really light. I'm going to keep it fun. We're going to explore how we actually do detoxification. I also took a lot of notes for this to make this video more presentable because it's hard to keep all of this in your mind and stay on track through such a big topic. So if you see me looking down, just checking my notes, okay? So let's start at the top. What is phase 2 detoxification and what are all of the different processes that are in phase 2? So the easiest way to think about this is an analogy. Imagine that in your body you have a bunch of toxins floating around or a bunch of compounds that your body wants to get rid of, and they look like this pen. Actually, let me put it over here so you can see it better. They look like this pen. So in this current state, this pen is not very reactive. It doesn't really want to react or respond with anything because it has the lid on. So it's not very reactive. As soon as we take the lid off, now you see it has this kind of pokey edge to it, it's very sharp. It could stab into something. This is what phase 1 does. So phase 1 takes a compound that is not very reactive, something that's harmful, but it's not super easy for the body to do anything with it, and it basically like makes it more reactive. This kind of sounds counterintuitive because you'd be thinking, well, why would my body take a toxin and then make it more dangerous by like making it all sharp and spiky? And it's a good question because when it's like this, when we've taken the lid off, this is like a sword, and now we've taken the sheath off. Like it now can cut everything. It's usually a reactive oxygen species. It can be very damaging inside of the body. And this is why sometimes people have Herxheimer reactions, because they speed up phase 1, but the phase 2 isn't in place. So the way to think about phase 2 is now we've got this pen, this spiky thing that is very reactive. Phase 2 is supposed to come along, and now it can bind with it. So it can come and cover this spiky bit, and it can take it away. And now it's not very harmful, and it can be removed from the body. But for this extra stage to come along, for this phase 2 to be able to do its job, it needs this part to be very spiky first. So basically, step by step, we have the compound. It's not very reactive. It's kind of inert. The body does phase 1 detoxification, which is where it takes the lid off. Now, this is more dangerous, but it makes it so that it's ready to be processed by phase 2. Then phase 2 comes along, and now it can grab onto it and process it and remove it from the body. That's basically this process. And what we're going to look at, the reason that we're focusing on phase 2 and why I haven't made a video on phase 1 is phase 1 isn't where most people have problems, it's phase 2. Because imagine you've got all of these spiky pens floating around inside of your body, like stabbing all of your cells, creating a lot of inflammation, creating a lot of damage. It's really important that we get phase 2 right because we want to find all of these toxic compounds that are very inflammatory, and we want to get them out of the body as quickly as we can. So working on phase 2 is really, really important. So what are the phase 2 detoxification processes? There's basically 7 of them. Don't get overwhelmed. We're going to walk through them step by step. Again, going to make things super easy for you. So for now, I'm just going to list them all off to you because you've probably heard of like half of these already. And once you realize that you've probably heard of most of these, it's not going to feel so scary. So first of all, we've got glutathione conjugation. Glutathione, you've probably already heard of it. Primary antioxidant in the human body. We use it to remove a lot of different types of compounds. It's one of the main phase 2 liver detoxification processes, and it's why glutathione is usually a part of almost every detox protocol that you do because it's super important. Next, we have methylation. You've also probably heard of this one. This one's pretty big nowadays. You know, Ben Lynch and Dirty Jeans. There's a lot of people talking about methylation. I've got several videos on methylation as well. So this is another phase 2 detoxification process. Third, we have sulfation. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if you've heard of this one too. This is also a liver detoxification process that uses sulfur as one of the main ingredients to do this detoxification. Fourth, we have acetylation. This one isn't talked about as much. I hadn't really heard of it that much before. And when I looked into it a little bit more, I realized that's because it's not really that important. It's probably the least important of all of them on this list. Not to say it isn't important, but it plays a much smaller role than some of the other ones that we have on this list. Fifth, we have glucuronidation. Maybe you've heard of that one too. This one is very fascinating. We're using glucose to make glucuronic acid. It's really important for removing estrogens, can be helpful in mold detoxification. Very interesting pathway. We'll come to that. 6, we have glycine conjugation. This is basically using an amino acid called glycine to do that kind of binding job that I described. And finally, we have amino acid conjugation. So this is where we are using other types of amino acids aside from glycine. So for example, things like a taurine or even potentially cysteine is kind of a little bit the same as the one before, because obviously glycine is an amino acid, but for some reason in phase 2, these have separate categories. I think this is because the glycine conjugation does a lot. It's a very heavy, very big pathway. So they kind of separated it because it requires quite a lot of focus. But essentially 6 and 7 are basically the same. They are amino acid conjugation. And that's it. So it doesn't sound that complicated at all, does it? So now all we're going to do is we're basically going to go through all of these. We're going to start at the top and work our way through. And then I'm going to give you a couple of different ways that we can work on trying to support where you have that blockage. So it's literally going to be step by step, symptom, solution, symptom, solution, symptom, solution. So let's start right at the top with glutathione. What might some symptoms be that would indicate that we're having problem with this glutathione conjugation phase 2 detoxification pathway? Most commonly, what you might be looking at would be things like chemical sensitivities, head pressure with detoxifications, and like headaches, especially kind of around the eyes. This could be very, very common. Poor tolerance to alcohol. So strong headache from a very small amount of alcohol consumed. And that could linger for, you might even feel lingering effects several days after having alcohol. Fatigue after a sauna, or even with doing anything that's creating some kind of inflammation inside of your body. So this could even be if you have poor recovery to workouts, and also heightened inflammatory reactivity. And this could also be because glutathione is the primary antioxidant in the body. So if you're struggling with doing this pathway, you're also going to see problems in other antioxidant processes in your body. So you might also see things like aging, where you kind of look older than you actually are. Could be any kind of inflammation, so joint pains, poor recovery from the gym, all of these things could be connected. So now we're going to look at what type of nutrients could we look at providing that might be helpful for your body. So first of all, we can make sure we provide those raw ingredients. So in terms of raw ingredients, the most common bottlenecks are glycine and cysteine. So you could look for these two compounds, you could look at adding something like a glycine supplement. Some people can be a bit sensitive, again, because it's very, very important, and it affects other pathways as well, like the amino acid conjugation and the glycine pathways that we're going to come to. But glycine is really important here as well. So you could look at increasing that very, very gradually according to your tolerance. There is different data saying that there are effective ranges between 3 and 10 grams. I honestly don't think it's necessary to go all the way as high as 10 grams. You can even start to see increases as low as 500 milligrams to even 1 gram. You could start to see some changes here. As far as the cysteine being low, we could literally take cysteine as a supplement. So something like NAC, N-acetylcysteine. This would be one of the most direct ways that we could support this. We could also look at other sulfur-based amino acids. So for example, something like methionine or taurine could be helpful. And any sulfur compounds could also help, because as you're going to see down the line, there are some other pathways like sulfation that can use cysteine. However, if we provide different nutrients, it spares that cysteine, and the cysteine can then instead be used to make glutathione. So any sulfur-based compounds, so this could be things like broccoli sprouts, this could be eggs, this could be eating your cruciferous vegetables. It's really important that we provide your body with a lot of sulfur. It's going to have a sparing effect, but as a more direct supplement, we could look at cysteine. It's also really important that we have enough vitamin B2. Vitamin B2 is a cofactor for this process. And we also need to make sure we have enough selenium for the body to be able to do this efficiently. So you're going to notice that there's a common theme in this video. We basically want lots of different amino acids. We want lots of different vitamins, mostly B vitamins, and we want lots of minerals. Things like selenium and zinc are going to be really, really important. And I am going to be repeating myself a little bit through the video because a lot of these pathways are very connected and they need similar things. So this one being dependent on B2, we could look at B2 as a supplement individually, but my general recommendation is to layer in some kind of good quality B complex at a small dose and gradually build it up. into something that we're having on a daily basis, because your body doesn't just have one pathway, it has multiple pathways. And if we start playing with one, it's going to affect the others. And B vitamins are grouped together because they're often used together. And as for the selenium, we could look at a selenium supplement, something in the sort of dosage range of 100 to 200 mcg total intake per day. So this would include food. If you're eating things like Brazil nuts, these can be high in selenium. So that's a good natural way to get it. But if you're not doing nuts, or if you want to get this from a supplement, you could look at a selenium supplement, or you could use the trace mineral product that I really like, the one that I use myself from Seeking Health. Not affiliated at all, would love to be because I really like it. It made a big difference for me. That's the trace minerals complex that they have. I also have another video where I talk about that specific product, so I'll stick that one up on screen so you can go and take a look at that. But don't go away just yet. Come back and revisit it. I'll also put the link in the description somewhere. So essentially, to summarize, generally, people that have low glutathione feel quite crap. That's quite a good kind of catch-all thing. Chronic fatigue syndrome, low energy, low immunity, chemical sensitivities, poor tolerance to alcohol, fatigue after sauna and exercise. This kind of gives you an idea. And the nutrients that we want, so we want the building blocks, which is glutamine, glycine, cysteine, is usually cysteine and glycine that are the bottlenecks. We also need vitamin B2 as a cofactor, and we need selenium to make sure that we are able to use this process efficiently. Next, we have sulfation. This is a really important pathway for processing steroid hormones, phenols, and neurotransmitters. So obviously you can imagine a lot of the symptoms you might experience could be connected to these things. So most of the symptoms that can be connected to this look like poor tolerance to phenols, surprise, surprise, hormone clearance sluggishness. So if you're a woman, this might mean that your cycle is a little bit less smooth in its transition. So, maybe there's more cramping, maybe there's more heavy bleeding, maybe periods are a little bit more prolonged. Maybe you're seeing increase in histamine-like symptoms through the period is possible as well. So generally poor hormone clearance. Also sensitivity to sulfur-based foods. So if you are experiencing like sulfur intolerance, or even potentially if you have like hydrogen sulfide SIBO, that could be due to this or could be connected. And often that sulfur sensitivity can present as a headache, probably one of the most common ways that you'll see it. So especially if you're getting headaches associated with sulfur foods, that could be a really good indicator that this might be a problem for you. So for sulfation to work, we basically need sulfate. Surprise, surprise, sulfation requires sulfate. I'm going to throw a little chart up on the screen here, and you're going to see that sulfur is really important, but we sometimes aren't very tolerant to sulfur-based compounds unless they're in the form of sulfate. So one of the best things that we can do is to take sulfate. So magnesium sulfate, which is basically Epsom salts in the bath, is the most direct way that we can support this. We can also support this with things like these amino acids that are high in sulfur compounds like cysteine, taurine, methionine, but we have to make sure that the body has the machinery in place to be able to handle these compounds. And there are two common bottlenecks that cause an intolerance here. So I'm going to give you the nutrients that you need to basically speed up these bottlenecks to help the body process this. So you can see this quite clearly in the image. The first bottleneck is in B6. So not having enough B6 stops us from being able to essentially turn cysteine all the way down into sulfite. So it's really important that we have B6 sufficiency to be able to do that. From there, sulfite can cause a lot of problems. Sulfites are probably the compound that causes the most symptomology in people that have sulfur intolerance. And if this is you, you'll know this is you because you'll generally feel much better. You feel a lot of relief from taking molybdenum. And again, as you'll see in the image, that next step requires molybdenum for that sulfite oxidase to work, to basically turn sulfite all the way down into sulfate. So assuming you don't have problems there with the molybdenum or the B6, it can be really easy to support this just by having like cruciferous vegetables, cysteine or taurine in the diet. But if you do have problems or bottlenecks in any of those areas, you might not tolerate those sulfur-based compounds very well. And you can support that by providing vitamin B6 and molybdenum, depending on where that blockage is for you. Or we could just completely skip to the end and provide the body with just sulfate in its most raw form. So it doesn't need any processing and it's completely ready to go. Ironically, I've actually seen that using sulfate improves tolerance to other sulfur compounds because often a lot of these problems are being caused by toxins that we're not eliminating. So if we provide that sulfate, we clear a lot of different pathways, the body starts to work better, and you become much more tolerant to those other sulfur-based compounds, which then has a positive feedback loop of improving sulfation even further. So to recap, to make things really, really simple, sulfur is essential for sulfation. We can take sulfur from the diet in the forms of foods and supplements. This could be any animal products. This could be eggs. This could be cruciferous vegetables. And for supplements, this could be cysteine, taurine, methionine, MSM, any supplement that's a sulfur-based compound. People that don't tolerate these very well usually have a blockage somewhere in that transsulfuration process. And the best way we can support this is with vitamin B6 and molybdenum. We can completely skip all of these processes by providing the body with just pure sulfate. One of the best ways to do that is with Epsom salt baths, which are magnesium sulfate. In my experience, to get high enough doses, 1 or 2 cups isn't really enough. I've used doses between 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cups with different clients, depending on the situation. I used 10 cups for about 3 years, and it was one of the biggest game changers for my healing process. I also have a video where I talk about Epsom salts in much more detail. I will also put that one in the description if you want to go check that one out afterwards. Next, we have methylation. Methylation, one of my favorite pathways, because for me, it made such a big difference with my symptoms. Getting my methylation right improved my energy a lot. It reduced my fatigue. It got rid of this like big headache that I would just chronically have over the right side of my head and my neck. It helped my quality of life so much. So I'm a big fan of methylation, which is why I have like 3 methylation videos already. And for that reason, I'm not going to go as in depth into methylation today. I'm just going to give you the takeaway, the practical steps. And if you want a full methylation guide, you can go and check that one out after the video. So the most common symptoms that you might be experiencing, or the most common indicators, because some of these are lab markers as well, would be elevated homocysteine. We need folate and other methyl donors to convert homocysteine back into methionine. So if you've got high blood labs with high homocysteine levels, almost a guarantee that you're not methylating very well. Mood instability. Your body uses methyl donors to produce and break down loss of neurotransmitters. Very, very important. Poor stress resilience, very connected to methylation. Your body uses methyl donors like stress management molecules. So if you don't have enough, your stress tolerance is really, really poor. Histamine sensitivity. This is a huge one. We have a pathway called HNMT, histamine and methyltransferase. It's a pathway that uses methyl donors to break down histamine. So if you have histamine problems, there's a good likelihood methylation might be a little bit off, and a cognitive sort of brain fog kind of feeling. We do methylation billions of times every second. We do it a lot in our brain tissue. It's really important for cognition. It's also really important in the liver, surprise, surprise, as a phase 2 detoxification pathway. So it can honestly really be connected to just about anything. It's also possible to have some genetic mutations connected to methylation. So things like MTHFR, BHMT, MTR or MTRR mutations. These could all be indicators that you might benefit from a little bit of extra methylation support. So this one is very, very easy. We're just basically providing methyl donor nutrients. So we're putting ingredients inside of the body that have a methyl donor attached to them. So the way to think about a methyl donor is, imagine a nutrient is carrying a little suitcase. This suitcase is a methyl donor, and it's not the nutrient that the body wants, it's the little suitcase. So you can think about these nutrients that are carrying these little suitcases as being like delivery men trying to deliver these suitcases. And if we need methylation support, it doesn't matter really where that nutrient comes from. It's more that we get those little suitcases. So whether it comes from methylfolate, which is vitamin B9, or whether it comes from methyl B12, it doesn't really matter. It's not the nutrient that's really important. It's the little suitcase. So when we're providing methylation support, it doesn't actually matter which of these you do. Obviously, if you have a deficiency in one of these, doing that one would be more helpful. And if you have a genetic bottleneck with one of these, then providing that nutrient would also be potentially more helpful. But overall, it's just about making sure that the body has enough methyl nutrients in total. So the best ways to address this would be different types of methyl nutrients. So I'm going to give you a small list of different methyl nutrients that you could look at trying. First is methylfolate. So this is vitamin B9 bound to a methyl donor. You will find this in a product. It will be called methylfolate or 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. I know it's a big complicated name, but basically just look for 5-MTHF. It's usually as a glucosamine or a calcium salt. It's really important that this is folate, not folic acid and not folinic acid. Folinic acid doesn't have the methyl donor. It doesn't have that little suitcase. So it doesn't actually support methylation. We can also look at methylcobalamin. So this is vitamin B12 bound to, again, this little suitcase, this methyl group. Vitamin B12 can be tricky for some people. If you have any like gut issues or gastritis, you might not absorb it very well. This was the case for me, and I relied on methylcobalamin injections. These were injections that I would do at home This was the only way I was able to get my methylation status to improve and to get my B12 levels up and all of the symptoms associated with the B12 deficiency. But if your gut isn't too bad, if you don't have any gastritis, you'd probably be okay with a supplement. Just make sure that it's not just vitamin B12, it's the form. It has to be methylcobalamin. So hydroxycobalamin doesn't do it. Cyanocobalamin doesn't do it. Adenosylcobalamin doesn't do it. It has to be methylcobalamin to support methylation. Next, we have two very interesting compounds. We have choline. So this could come in the form of phosphatidylcholine. This is very high in egg yolks, but you can also get a supplement called phosphatidylcholine, or what I prefer to do is a supplement called sunflower lecithin. This is just because it's very high in phosphatidylcholine and it's much cheaper than a refined phosphatidylcholine supplement. And betaine. This is not the same betaine as betaine HCl, the type of acid that the body produces to digest food. Instead, we're looking for betaine, also known as TMG, trimethylglycine. So this is basically glycine with 3 methyl groups attached to it. And the body can take one of those methyl groups off, turn it into dimethylglycine. So we're going from trimethyl, which is 3-methyl, to dimethyl, which is 2-methyl, to basically take a methyl donor off of it. So these generally, methylfolate, methylcobalamin, choline, and trimethylglycine, also known as betaine, are the best methyl donors that we can provide to the body. There's also a really cool trick that I learned where instead of providing more methyl donors to the body, so instead of taking more methyl nutrients, so it's almost like instead of earning more, we can learn how to spend less. And one of the best ways that we can do this is by taking creatine. Creatine is a methylation end product. So the body uses a lot of methylation to create creatine. And if we supplement with dietary creatine, so we take creatine as a supplement, it means the body doesn't have to make so much creatine, and then it can reallocate all of that methylation demand onto doing other things like detoxification, like breaking down hormones, like breaking down histamine, and creatine tends to be really well tolerated. So you don't need to be doing insane doses like 10 or 20 grams of creatine to get these benefits. These benefits start as low as 1 gram, and they really max out in terms of methylation support around 3 to 5 grams, depending on your level of stress, your level of activity. And as far as dosages with these B vitamins and with the choline, I would say it depends a lot. It's very difficult because everyone needs different kinds of supports when it comes to methylation. I would look at trying a good methyl B complex, so B vitamin that's methylated, and start on a really, really, really small dose, like 1/10 of that capsule, and gradually increase it, and your body's ability to methylate will adapt over time. Next, let's do acetylation and get this one out of the way because it's a really, really quick one. So acetylation is used to process aromatic amines and specific drugs. So if you notice that you are a little bit chemically sensitive to certain things, you have more medication side effects or drug intolerance, this could be an indicator that you struggle a little bit with acetylation. If you have any genetic NAT polymorphisms, this could also be an indicator that you might struggle a little bit with acetylation. So the only real nutrient that we need here is vitamin B5 as a cofactor. So it can be really helpful. Again, B complex has B5 in it. So that's again why I'm suggesting a B complex is good, because it does all of these at the same time. But also we want to make sure that your ATP potential is high. So making sure you have enough magnesium. Magnesium is important for every single one of these processes because all phase 2 processes are very dependent on energy. These are all very energy intensive processes, and ATP is stored in the body connected to magnesium molecules. So we need to make sure that we have enough magnesium, and we also need to make sure that the body has enough energy. So we need to make sure that that caloric intake is high so the body has access to a lot of raw energy so that it can do all of these processes, because it's very expensive. So overall, vitamin B5 is the only one that's really important for this specifically, and in general, like good rule of thumb, magnesium important for everything, and good amount of caloric density, a lot of energy for the body, again, important for all of them. So that one was really quick. Now we're going to move on to glucuronidation. Glucuronidation is also quite a fast one just because it's quite simple and there's just a few very simple ways to support it. But there's a really very interesting fact, a little kind of like niche thing that's very interesting, very important if you have any problems with glucuronidation. So firstly, some indicators that we might have a problem with the glucuronidation process. We could have some hormone recirculation patterns, elevated levels of bilirubin. So if you do blood tests and you see your bilirubin is consistently high, this could be an indicator of poor glucuronidation. Increased level of drug sensitivity. And also if you're one of these people that is very sensitive to bowel movements, as in if you miss a bowel movement, you see a lot of like a big increase in your level of symptomology, that can also be an indicator that glucuronidation is struggling. The most important nutrient for glucuronidation, believe it or not, is glucose. Now, when I learned this, I thought that was incredible, because when people talk about detoxification, they're always talking about different B vitamins and minerals, and to hear that glucose is really important in detoxification kind of blew my mind a little bit, but you can kind of hear it in the name. glucuronidation. So this compound is made using glucose. So making sure that your body has enough glucose is really important. This is one reason I suspect a lot of people wake up at 3 a.m. and they can't get back to sleep, is because the liver glycogen has run out and it's struggling to make enough glucose to do this glucuronidation process, which is really important for breaking down different compounds, especially hormones, which have a big impact on how you feel and your ability to sleep. So other than glucose, there's not really that much we can do to support this from a nutrient side of things. We've got the 2 points as before with the acetylation being, this is ATP dependent. So we want to make sure that we've got a good amount of energy, and we also want to make sure we have enough magnesium. So those two things kind of go without saying because it's true for all of these points. But one thing that's really important here is bile flow. If the bile doesn't flow well into the gut, this pathway cannot drain. Most of these metabolites, the compounds that are broken down through glucuronidation, leave the body through the bile, through the digestive system, and through the stool. So if the bile isn't flowing well, glucuronidation could be significantly inhibited. Now, there's this really interesting kind of niche understanding, which is that our gut bacteria can produce a compound called beta-glucuronidase. If you've ever done a GI map or a stool test that looks at some of these functional digestive markers and you have elevated beta-glucuronidase, this is something you really need to pay attention to. Because essentially what beta-glucuronidase does is it's a compound produced by dysbiotic microbes in your gut. So imbalanced, potentially harmful or pathogenic microbes produce this compound, and it's an enzyme that breaks down this bond. So imagine this pen example that I gave you earlier. Your body's done a really good job of taking this thing, it has bound to it, and it's removed it, and it's glucuronidated it, and now it's put it in the gut like this to be excreted. What this enzyme does, this beta-glucuronidase that's produced by these gut bacteria, is it comes along and it kind of like tickles this glucuronic acid bond, and it takes it off. And now you have a big toxin flowing around again, and this can reabsorb through something called enterohepatic recirculation. So this comes back into your body, and now you have a compound, a hormone, a toxin, whatever it is, that's now bioactive again, and it's floating around in your body and it's signaling how you feel, and it's affecting your oxidative stress state. This is a really big problem. So if this is the case, if you have high beta-glucuronidase, it's really important that we work on your gut. We need to improve the bile flow and the gut flora, because these are the most important things. We could take something called calcium deglucarate. This doesn't actually help with this detoxification pathway, but it kind of blocks this process where these gut bacteria are breaking this bond down. So it doesn't directly help glucuronidation. So if you don't have high beta-glucuronidase, there's no benefit to doing this. But if you do have elevated beta-glucuronidase, taking calcium deglucarate can help to reduce this reabsorption problem. You could look at taking, I believe, between 500 mg and 1,500 mg per day. It's not something you want to do indefinitely, because obviously it's bound to calcium. You're going to load a bunch of calcium into your body. In the short term, this can be really helpful because it helps to break this enterohepatic recirculation of these compounds, and it allows your body to actually finally get rid of them. But long term, we want to be working on the gut, reducing these organisms and increasing the beneficial microbes that are going to crowd these dysbiotic microbes out, and improve that bile flow and make sure that the bowels are moving at least once a day. That's going to be really, really important to support this pathway. Wow, we've only got 2 left. These ones are going to be pretty fast as well because these are really, really simple to explain. If you've made it this far into the video and you've learned something, or you're really enjoying this process of having this very seemingly overwhelming advanced concept broken down into super easy steps, I would really love it if you'd leave me a little like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then I really don't know what you're doing, because the way that we talk about these types of topics is not like anybody else does it. So definitely subscribe. We've got way more videos coming. I've got a little bonus that I'm going to tease at the end of the video. It's not going to come in this video. It's going to come sometime soon. But if you found this interesting so far, you're definitely going to want to catch that video. So if you haven't already, drop me a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and leave me a little comment below letting me what you've learned so far. So 6, glycine conjugation. Although this one is quite simple to explain, because obviously being glycine conjugation, the most important nutrient is glycine. So it's quite an easy one. What's really interesting for me is how this can affect certain processes. So some of the key indicators that you could be sensitive or having a blockage here in this glycine pathway would be some sensitivity to salicylates. This is a very nasty sensitivity. So if this is a part of your salicylate sensitivity, getting this right can make a huge difference. Also compounds like benzoates, and this could be other types of food preservatives as well. So if you eat any kind of like deli meats or anything that's like preserved and it just wipes you out, there's a good likelihood that this could be a problem for you. Some people also notice sleep disturbances. So if you have problems sleeping, insomnia, you generally don't sleep well or feel rested, this could be a problem for you. And if you feel like you have heightened stress reactivity. So if you feel like the response that your body has to stress is disproportionate, like you have a small inconvenience, but your body's responding like it's a level 10 life or death level of stress, this could be because you don't have enough glycine. So you probably won't find it surprising to learn that one of the things that depletes glycine the most is chronic stress. And when I say chronic stress, a lot of people think that when I say chronic stress, I mean like work stress or family stress or emotional stress. And this is true. These are all stress. But stress is also structural. So if you have any kind of chronic pain, if you've ever had an injury or a broken bone, that's stress. If you have chemical imbalances inside of your body, if you have a gut dysbiosis, if you've been exposed to toxic compounds, these are all stress. The body responds in the exact same way. So when I say stress, don't take it as me saying like, oh, you just need to go and meditate and you just need to go and relax and like, why don't you take a chill pill? Maybe you just need to calm down. That's not what I'm saying. Stress can be physiological. It can be an injury, an imbalance, a toxin, a deficiency. This causes stress, and stress depletes glycine. So basically, all we want to do is provide the body with glycine. We can do this with a supplement. That's a really easy way to do it. You can just look at taking glycine. I think I mentioned previously, we can use doses anywhere from 1 gram can be beneficial for some people, sometimes even up to 10 grams. I've never gone that high. I've never experimented with that, but from the literature that I read, it can be effective at that dose. If you want to be a little bit more cautious, like I'm a bit wiser now than my wild days when I would just like try anything, I would probably aim for like maybe 3 grams of glycine being the maximum dose, and obviously build yourself up there gradually because this is really important pathway. Could create some imbalances if you increase it too quickly. So work gradually, listen to your body. As with all things, listen to what your body's telling you. Your body's intelligent. Don't push through. We could also look at getting more glycine in the diet. So the best ways to do this would be something like collagen. So like collagen protein powders can be a really good way to do it. So things like broth also could be really nice, especially if the broth is made with connective tissue. So instead of it being like a bone broth just made with the bones, we've also got like a joint, or like if you make it from a chicken and you know you've got that like sternum bit and like the connective tissue around the joints, that's going to be much higher in collagen, which means it's going to be much higher in glycine as well. And also we could look at gelatin itself. So like gelatin that you use to make jelly, this would also be a good source of this. But yeah, easiest way really is to take a glycine supplement. You can buy it in 1 gram capsules and experiment and see how you do with that. And finally, we're on the last one already. Can you believe it? It wasn't that hard, was it? It's actually not that difficult. Final phase 2 detoxification pathway is amino acid conjugation. So this is other amino acids other than glycine. So there are a few different amino acids that can do this. You could look at cysteine, you could look at glutamine, you could look at taurine. The most important one that I'm going to touch on, because we haven't talked about it in any of the other things, is taurine. Taurine is really important in creating bile acids. So it's really important for bile flow. And one of the best ways to notice this would be that you have poor tolerance to fats. So if you experience poor fat tolerance, sluggish bowels, floating stools, if you have fat soluble deficiencies, that would be a really good indicator. So like low vitamin D, low vitamin A, low vitamin K. The stools can look different depending on what type of fat malabsorption you have. So you could have like these greasy, pasty stools that kind of stick to the back of the toilet. They could be darker in color. They could float on the top, or you could even have like an oil fill. Like when you look, it's kind of shiny on the top of the toilet bowl. Those could all be indicators that the bio quality isn't really very good. It's not working very well. And these could all indicate that your body would benefit a little bit from taurine. So taurine is super important. And this whole process connected to bile is super important because we remove a lot of these compounds. So like once we've bound these things to glutathione, or once we've bound it to glycine, or once we've bound it to glucuronic acid, a lot of these compounds actually leave through the bile. So it's really important that we make sure that bile quality is working really, really well. And the body uses this phase 2 detox process in this process. So easy solution here is simply taurine or whatever amino acid it is. And this is why I'm so big on promoting different amino acids and like protein intake as a really important part of detoxification, because when most people think detox, they're thinking B vitamins and trace minerals, and that's not a bad thing. Or they're thinking like coffee enemas, cleansing teas. I don't think they're as good. I really prefer this like nutritional angle. I've found this is really, really helpful. But no one thinks about protein. No one thinks about glucose. No one thinks about the raw amount of energy that the body has available to do these very expensive processes. So the most important thing here again is magnesium, always important. Overall energy, really, really important. So making sure the body has lots of ATP available. And then finally, making sure we provide those raw ingredients. So glycine is important here. Taurine is important here. Cysteine is important here. Glutamine, all of these basic amino acids that are just found in all animal products. These are basically the backbone of this process. So that is basically my full phase 2 detoxification guide. Hopefully you feel better equipped to tackle the detoxification process. However, phase 2 is only one part of detoxification. There are some other things like NRF2, which is like the master thermostat. It's kind of like this thing that we can twist that turns up all detoxification processes. And I haven't got a video about that yet. I'd love to make a video on metallethioneins and heavy metal detox, but I only like to make videos that you're interested in watching. There's no point in me sitting here talking to a camera for multiple hours, doing tens of hours of research and figuring out what to talk about if it's a topic that you don't actually care about, or you don't want to learn about, or you don't want to hear. So if you like the idea of the NRF2 video, let me know. And if you like the idea of this metallethionine video, for this chemical process, the same way that we talked about today for certain compounds, how the body detoxes heavy metals, let me know in a comment below. Let me know that you want to see the NRF2 video or the metallethionine video. Maybe you don't know how to spell metallethionines. I probably don't know. So just say the video on heavy metals. Let me know if you want one or the other or both. Obviously, if you want both, I can make them both, but you have to let me know you want them. Let me know what you learned. And if you really like the video, give me a like, make sure you subscribe, and maybe consider going to watch some of the other videos that I talk about in this video, like the methylation one or the Epsom salts one. I'll make sure I'll link those for you below or put them on screen somewhere. Through the magic of post-production, they'll be somewhere for you. So that's everything from me today. Hope you found it really interesting and helpful. And if you have any questions, make sure you leave them for me below. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.